What is up, guys? Fahir here from AwesomeTuts.com, and moving forward with our game, we are nearly finished. What we need to do is we need to create the enemies now, and of course program the enemies, or otherwise they will not read your mind and, well, be controlled with your mind, of course. But before that, go here on AwesomeTuts.com and you see this pop-up window. This is a free crash course. If you want to take it, which is also good. Anyways, if you're interested in 3D game development, here it is on my website. No fear, you have nothing to lose, but a lot to gain. You have 30-day money-back guarantee. The games that we create in the course are absolutely fantastic. I teach you a lot of great things that you will not find in any other course. So that is, well, for your own benefit. And also you can download the assets in this complete project for this tutorial. Link is in the description below. Now moving forward, I'm gonna right click here and create a new folder, which is gonna be enemy scripts, and inside of the enemy scripts I am gonna right click and create a new C# script, which is gonna be the enemy script. But before that, we need to create the enemy, and in order to do that, we are simply gonna copy the robot. So copy him, duplicate him here in the hierarchy. So duplicate him and change his name to enemy. We also need to tag him with the enemy tag. So he is currently untagged. I'm gonna go into add tag, and here I'm simply gonna say enemy. Select the enemy here again, and I am gonna tag him with the enemy tag. I am going to remove the player script from him, so remove the component. So now everything else will be the same: the rigid body, the concept force, the box collider, the audio source, except the name is enemy and his tag is enemy. So now drag and drop him here into the prefabs folder. So now we have a prefab out of our enemy. Select the enemy here in the hierarchy, and I'm gonna click on add component and search for the enemy script and attach on him. Since we attach the script, hit apply so that change applies to the prefab also. I'm gonna double click on the script here and open it in Mono Develop. As we see here, let me just tag the class as always. So class, hold enter just to give a little bit of space. Go here and we are good to go. Now we need a couple of variables as always, and some of those variables are the same as here in our player script, such as we need all of these particles except for the boost. So I'm going to copy these lines of code. So particle system, right muzzle, right and left fire. We don't need the boost, but copy it, because here you can simply paste it like this and, well, simply remove the boost, and voila, that's all the philosophy that you need. Also here, we need this. So we need the particle system emission module for the right muzzle and left one, and right and left fire. So copy that, go back here, and right below, paste it. Something like this. So we are good to go. We also need, and what did I do? So I need space here. We also need a private animator, which is anim, and I also need a public game object, which is explosion. I also need a public float speed, which is equal to 1F of course, and private bool can move, which is by default equal to true. So these are the variables that I need: a private animator, a game object for explosion, a speed variable, and can move. So going back here, we need to right click and import these explosion for the robot or the enemy. So right click here, import package, custom one, and it is gonna be this one, mesh explosion. This is the one that we need. So mesh explosion, double click on it, and voila, here it is. It will be imported. If I put it here into the scene, let me just go here, mesh explosion, I put it here. This is that explosion, like all of those cubes explode. We need to attach a component, which is the destroy. How is the name? Let me just see on the regular explosion. How did I name it? Explosion script. So attach the explosion script on it. Explosion script. Voila. And we also need to attach the material. So go into the materials and the player material. So mesh explosion, attach the player material on him, so that now when it explodes, these particles are not purple. So we don't want purple particles. Hit apply, and that change apply to the prefab. So now we can take the enemy and add that component on him. So explosion, it is gonna be the mesh explosion. So select the mesh, the one that we have just edited, attach the explosion script and attach the player material so that the boxes, when they explode, their color is not purple. So attach that. For the particle systems, let's go here, enemy, walk in, right hand, muzzle, and here it is. So this is the right muzzle, and this is the left muzzle right here. This is the right fire, and this is the left fire. So here it is. We have the mesh explosion, muzzle. This one is for the left or right, and this one is for the left. And this one is right fire, this one is left fire. We are good to go. So hit apply here, and voila. Now we can code some things. And what we need also here from or after our particle systems and the private emission module, we also need a private bool can shoot. And this one is going to determine if we can shoot or not. And by the way, we also need a private audio source, which is the audio manager. So again, this one is going to determine if we can shoot or not. And for that, we will use a collider, so on and so forth. Do not worry about that. Inside of the awake function, we're going to get ourselves references to everything. So we need to get the anim, which is equal to get component. Anim is equal to get component in children. And here we need to pass animator. Animator, I hate it when Unity does not obey me. Now, why get component in children when it is the same thing as with our player here? So we have just duplicated the game object. As you can see, robot and enemy, they are the same thing. We just duplicated, and the anim or the animator component is attached on the walk-in, which is the child game object. So we need to say here get component in children, because otherwise it will not work. And here we can also type anim play walk, but I'm not gonna do that. I showed you also that with the player. Afterwards, we need to get the audio manager. So audio manager is equal to get component. Audio manager, what is this? Audio roll-off mode, audio source. So audio source. I typed or tried to type audio manager. That's the reason why I get that. So we also need to get a reference to all of these emission modules from these particle systems. And for that, we can copy all of this here. So you can simply copy all of these lines of code. So all of this right here, it's the same code. So if I go back, paste it here, we're good to go. It's the same code because we need to get the emission from the particle, well, or the appropriate particle. So we need to get the emission. And we're getting that by using right muzzle.emission, storing it here. We're doing the same thing for the left muzzle, right and left fire. And then we're setting rate over time to be 0 because I showed you why. Because if we run the game now, the particles will just start shooting. And well, we do not want that. We don't want the particles to start shooting. Instead, we want to detect when the player is enraged, then we will start to shoot. And now I want to move the robots. So here I'm going to create void move. And inside of the move function, we can test if can move. If we can move, then we are going to say transform.translate. And well, here we are going to say vector3.forward multiplied by speed multiplied by time.delta time. This is for moving the player. It's the same thing as we did with our, this is actually for moving the enemy, but it's the same thing as we did with our player here. And I've explained it. So it is going to move the player in his forward direction, multiplying that by speed and delta time to smooth out the movement. Now we need to test if the player is grounded or if the enemy is grounded. And for that, we are also going to take this one. So we can go back here and copy this function because it's the same function. So simply copy it and paste it here. So we have is grounded, and we are also going to have check front. So bool check front, and this is going to check in front of our robot or in front of the enemy. So if he does not have more space to move in front, he will turn back. And for that, we're simply going to say return. And actually, I'm going to take all of this here. So here we're going to say return physics raycast transform that position plus transform that position forward and multiply that by 0.4 plus transform that up. This one we are going to multiply by 0.5, and this is not going to be on vector 3 down, but instead is going to be under vector or transform that forward. Because this is the blue axis of the game object in world space. We talked about it. If I go back here, take the robot, I'm going to simply deactivate him. And we are left with the enemy. So notice the blue axis, this one right here, it's forward. As you can see, we're moving him forward, but depending on the rotation, forward can be on the left side. So this is why we are using here transform that forward. And now here we're going to test if is grounded. So if is, I hate it when he does not give me autocomplete. So if the player or if the enemy is not grounded, or if we don't have front anymore, why isn't it giving me autocomplete? I hate it. I hate it. So what we are asking here we are asking if we are not grounded, or if, well, we are checking front. So do we have front? Can we go? Or, well, actually we are checking if we don't have front again. So here we are gonna simply say anim.play. It's gonna be the idle like this. And here we're gonna say lean tween. So lean tween dot rotate around local. And it's gonna be the game object. And we're gonna rotate him on the y-axis, vector 3 up. We're gonna rotate him 180 degrees in 0.5 seconds. And after that, we're simply gonna say set on complete. And here we're simply gonna say completed move. This is the name of the function, or simply complete move. And now we need to create it. So it's gonna be void complete move. And here we're simply gonna say anim.play walk. So after we complete the move, we are gonna play the walk animation, and can move is gonna be equal to true. So again, here we are using this can move to test. If we can move, and we are gonna put that right here. So we're gonna put it here. And by the way, here we need to say can move is gonna be equal to false. And the reason for it is while we are rotating the game object, we don't want it to move. So after the game object rotates, and we can do that here actually. So here I can do it. So anim play idle can move is false, and after that call the lean tween to rotate the game object. Now essentially going up from the script before we test it out, we just got ourselves or declared some variables such as the private animator, public game object explosion, speed for the movement, can move to check if we can move or not. And here we have the particles, which is the same exact thing as, well, we did with the player. So same exact thing with the player. And what is this gonna do? Well, it's gonna turn off those particle effects so that we don't start shooting right away. And after that, we also have the audio source, and we have the private bool can shoot. Can shoot is gonna control when our enemy is gonna shoot. And here we have in the awake, we're getting the components. We are, well, getting the emission variables, or a reference to the emission of the particle system, setting the rate over time to 0. And here in the update, we have created a move function, which was this one right here. If we can move, then translate towards the forward, or in the direction forward, which is the local forward of the game object. You multiply that by speed and delta time to move it. And if we are not grounded and we are checking front, so if we are not grounding or check front, so do we have to move front? If not, then here we are simply gonna rotate around local. And here we have the game object, which is, well, the enemy. Rotate him on the y-axis for 180 degrees and 0.5 seconds. After that completes, call complete move, which is gonna play the walk animation, and it is gonna, well, call here can move. By the way, if we go here, we should actually call here anim set or anim play the walk animation. So play the walk animation right away because we are trying to move, so it should play the walk animation. Now we can test it out. And I am gonna take the enemy. So let me just go here, find the enemy. Activate the robot. The enemy is right here. But before that, I'm gonna create an empty game object. And I'm gonna position him in 0, 0, 0. And this is gonna be enemies. Now this one, or enemy holder actually. So enemy holder. I'm gonna right click on him and create here another game object. I'm gonna call this one enemies. And I'm gonna position the enemy under enemies. So now I can simply drag him over here. Enemy, I can put him right here like this. Yeah, just a little bit up so that he is not inside of this cube. And if I hit the play button, let me go and test it out. Will the enemy move? And if everything is okay. So enemy is moving, and notice now when he gets till the end, he is rotating. So when he gets till the end, he is rotating. Again, he will go here till the end, and voila, he is rotating, which is the effect that we wanna, well, achieve. So far, so good. The enemy is rotating, everything is okay, everything is cool. Now we need to detect the enemy, or actually we need to detect the player and shoot when the enemy detects the player. And for that, I'm gonna select the enemy here. Did we add him as a child under enemies game object here? So I need to add another box collider on him. Let me just position, so move component up. Yes, break the connection to the prefab, I don't care. Move up one more time. And now I'm gonna hit apply. So what I need to do is, I need to take this box collider, and I need to center X, actually center Z is gonna be here, center Y is gonna be 0.5, the size Y is gonna be something like this, and size Z is gonna be something like this. So a little bit more, probably something like this can work. So if the player, so if our robot player touches this collider, which needs to be set as a trigger, so set him to be a trigger. When he is touched, notice, when we touch this right here, the green thing, we will detect that in our code and allow our robot to shoot. But hit apply so that the change applies to the prefab now. So going back now inside of our script, below void complete move, we need to create void check to shoot. So inside of this one, we are gonna shoot. And we're gonna do that if, so if can shoot, then we are gonna shoot. And we're gonna do that inside of the update. So here, call it, in the update function, call our check to shoot. And practically we're simply gonna copy a lot of code from the player script. So we're gonna copy, let me just find, not this one, this one. So we're gonna copy all of this here. So I'm gonna simply copy this here. If audio manager is not playing, let me go back into the enemy script. If can shoot, if audio manager is not playing, we're gonna set him to play. We are gonna remove this one. And we're gonna start here. So we're gonna start the emission rate. So we're gonna put the emission rate to start here. Else, if we cannot shoot, we're simply gonna turn off the, well, emission rate. And here we can say else if can shoot like this. So we can either use it like this, or we can simply type else. So if we can shoot, then we're gonna shoot. If we cannot shoot, then voila, we cannot shoot. I'm simply gonna copy this line of code, put it here, and copy this line of code and put it here. So instead of play, now it needs to be stop. And here emission rate is gonna be 0 for both of these. If we cannot shoot, well, emission rate is equal to 0. Now we can test it out right away. If I go back here, or actually, excuse me, we need to detect that in our void on collision enter on trigger enter, which takes a collider, which is target, so target. And we simply need to check here if target.gameObject.name is equal to robot. So if we collide with the robot, can shoot is true. Otherwise, we are simply going to copy this line of code, and here is going to be on trigger exit. And if the target game object name is robot, after he exits the trigger, can shoot will be false. So this is all what we need to do. If I go back now, let me just lower my volume. I'm going to hit play. and automatically I'm gonna unhit play. So notice now, when we get into that collider, so notice here, when this collider touches us, this enemy robot is gonna start shooting. So do you see? He shoots. And as soon as we go outside of that collider, so we went outside of the collider, he will stop shooting. Why is that? Well, again, here it is, Untitled and Ontriggerenter. And I'm not sure if we use Ontriggerenter, but this is essentially this. So I'm gonna use my highlight. This is the trigger. So this is the trigger. When the player goes inside of the trigger, so the trigger, which is, well, this one right here, touches the player, it will detect that. So this is detect in Untitled. Now, when the player exits from the trigger, so this is the trigger, and now player exits. He was previously, so previously the player was in the trigger, like this, and now the player exits the trigger. This will be detected in Ontriggerenter. So, same way as we can detect when a game object touches another game object, we can detect if that game object separates from the other game object, and that is detected here in Ontriggerenter, or excuse me, Ontriggerexit. And we can test if the game object that has exited or exit the trigger, which game object is it? Check the name, check the tag of that game object, and whatnot. So this is how we are doing it, and you saw that in action right away. Now, for everything here, why can't I press quit? For everything here, well, it's clear because we did everything inside of our player script, except that here I am not using this start coroutine light control, even though you can also use that for the enemy robots. You can use it same way as with our players. So we are checking if we can shoot, and if the audio manager is not playing, make the audio manager play the shoot effect or shoot sound, and simply set the rate of the particles to grow so that the particles come out of the particle system. And if we cannot shoot, then stop the shoot sound and don't allow the particles to emit any shoot sound. Now, regarding here, we have the missile script, as you can see. So here it is. The missile script is gonna call or send the message damage to the enemy. So if the target tag is equal to enemy, it's gonna send the damage message. So let's create that. So it's gonna be void damage, like this. And if we hit damage, we're simply gonna say instantiate the explosion at transform.position with quaternion.identity, and after that destroy the game object. So simply after we call damage, which is inside of the explosion or missile script. So if the missiles hit the enemy, so if the missiles hit the enemy, which is the robot, we're gonna call him and send a message. I talked about send message. It's gonna go on the game object, check every script that game object has attached on it, and it is gonna go in every script and see if that script has a damage function, and it is gonna call it, and we just created it. The damage function is simply gonna instantiate the explosion, which is this one right here. So it is gonna instantiate the explosion at the position of the current enemy, so enemy's position, using the identity quaternion, which is rotation 0, 0, 0, and it's after that gonna destroy the game object. But the question now is, how can we detect, so if I go back now, and if I try to shoot the robot with the particles, notice it's not working. So it's not working, we cannot shoot him, blah, blah, blah. But if I shoot him with the rockets, notice, what just happened? The rockets did not touch him. Let me just see here. Did the rockets touch him? Yes, they did, but did we tag him? So enemy, we tagged him with the enemy tag. Let me just check here into the missile script. Oh yeah, we need to set him on the ground layer. So we need to set him on the ground layer. Let me just go back, select the enemy here, and the layer is default. We need to set him on the ground layer. No, just this object. I'm gonna hit apply. Let's go back, and this was one bug that we just fixed. So we need to set him on the ground layer. Notice now, I'm shooting him again with the particles. So I'm shooting him, it's not working. When I shoot him with the rockets, you just saw what happened. He was devastated. He just got destroyed. But the question now is how we can shoot him with particles. So how can we detect when the particles touch the game object? Well, for that, we have void on particle collision. So on particle collision, which takes a game object, which I'm also going to call target. So if the target dot game object, or actually target dot name, is equal to muzzle, then we are going to do what? We're simply going to call damage. So call damage right here to destroy the game object. Again, call damage. Why we're checking it like this? Well, first of all, if I go into the robot and here Vulcan, right arm, muzzle, here it is. So notice here the particles. So the particles have, well, some of the effects here, or some of the properties. One of these properties is the collision. So as you can see here, we have the collision, and that means that we can detect collision with the particles. The particles can touch something. You can simulate bullets. You can simulate whatever you want with this. So notice here we have particles, or collisions is checked for particles, and now we collides with everything. This is with which layers we are going to collide, with every layer. And also enable dynamic collision, send collision message needs to be checked, because then we are going to send a message to on particle collision. So here we can test the name of the game object. Why we're testing if the name of the game object is muzzle? Because notice here, it's the muzzle. It's called muzzle. The game object is simply called muzzle. So we're testing if the game object that has those particles is called muzzle, then we are gonna take damage and destroy the game object, which is the robot. The same way you can do that if you want to detect on the player. So if the player gets hit with the particles from the robot, you can do that here. Simply copy this void on particle collision and then destroy the player after he is hit with those particles. Now let's test it out. So if I go back here, you're going to see one interesting thing, and you're going to be confused now. So I'm shooting him. Notice, again, I'm shooting him, but nothing is happening. So I just said that we will shoot him and it's gonna work. Well, if you go here and pause the game, you will see that he's not being hit with those particles. Notice when I select the enemy, you see where his collider is, right where he cannot be hit with those particles. So what we need to do is, I'm gonna stop the game, take this robot and just resize his size on the X a little bit. So something like this. So voila, we are good to go. Simply resize his collider on the X. Let's say at 0.6 maybe, or 0.5 is gonna do. I'm gonna hit apply. And now I'm gonna run the game and let's test it out, see if everything is working. So now when we shoot him with the particles, come on, go back here. Shoot him with the particles. Voila, he gets destroyed. So this was it for this video, guys. We coded the complete script for the enemy. We're only left with the rocket, or those launchers that are the cannon that is following the player. We will see that. But essentially, this is nothing new. Everything we did before. So this is nothing new, some new concept except the logic, of course. But I've explained what this here is, what this here is. And here, as for the grounded, we also explained that in the player script. Check front is similar. So it's completely similar, except it is checking to the forward. So forward of the game object. Complete walk, well, you can see what it does here. Can shoot, also I've explained it. Damage is gonna, will destroy the game object. On trigger, enter and exit, we explained. And on particle collision, I have just explained what it is. So that is it for this video, guys. The only thing that is left for us to do is duplicate these enemies. So duplicate them and position one over here. Duplicate this one, position him over here. Let me just go and see where he is. Something like this is completely fine. Duplicate this one and position him over here. And we need to duplicate, well, one more. So one more, and this one is gonna be positioned here, and I think that is okay. And you can put as many of these enemies as you like. And if we run the game, we will see that all of these enemies are, well, moving on their own, and they will detect where the player is. They will start shooting and whatnot. So yeah, as you can see, he just died. Let me just go here and check that. That is because his own particles destroyed him. So his own particles have destroyed him. Let me just go here and select the enemy. Walk in, I'm gonna say muzzle right, and here I am gonna say muzzle left, just so that the enemy does not get destroyed by his own particles. Hit apply so that those changes apply to the prefab. If we see that now, so if we try to see it now, when this, well, enemy starts shooting, notice now, he will not get destroyed with his own particles. As you saw, the particles bounce off and on, and they can hit things when they bounce off and on. So just change the name here because we are testing in the code. If the game object's name is muzzle, then the, well, enemy will be destroyed. Otherwise, if it's named muzzle left, right, 1, 2, whichever other name you put except muzzle, he will not be destroyed. Anyways, this video is, well, too long now. Fahir here from AwesomeTuts.com. Go and check out the course here. Will not regret it. I promise that it's the best. The best course on the internet. You will not find a better one. No way. I guarantee that. So the students are super satisfied. I get approximately 50 to 100 students every day in this course. So it's awesome. Just go inside of it, enjoy, and you will not regret it. Want to download this project along with all of these assets? Link is in the description below. And I will see you guys in the next video.